Just wanted to thank you both for joining me today. I have Michael Abrams from Kelly Santini and Geoff
Hello.
Chislett from Mortgage Alliance Ottawa. Thank you to both of you for joining me today. I appreciate you both doing this. What I wanted to do is just talk about what's happening in the real estate market, both from a legal and a mortgage perspective, just to give our clients a bit of an idea of what's happening and how things are working and perhaps how things have changed during all of this COVID-19 stuff happening. Of course, everything we say is, to the best of our knowledge right now, and we know that things are changing quickly, and so tomorrow it might be a different answer. But anyway, just thought we'd bring everyone on. So thank you both for joining me and taking time. I'm sure you're both really busy. Okay, so I will just give everyone a brief summary of what's happening in the real estate world. In Ontario, we have been deemed as essential for real estate transactions, but what we're telling people is essential means you have to buy or sell because you've bought already or because you have to move by a certain date. Otherwise, we're kind of telling people this to hold, stay home as much as possible. And if we're not having any in-person meetings, so everything is being done virtually by video like this, and ideally we're doing as much as possible showings via video, although we're still listing homes and people are still buying homes in this crazy time. So I think we'll start talking to Geoff first. So Geoff, just wanted to get a sense from you in general, what is currently happening in the mortgage world?
We're still getting a few buyers, like you said. It's tough to buy a house virtually. So you don't, a video of the house is not really as good as walking through it and touching things. Lots of sellers, I guess, probably don't want that right now. Mortgages are moving through. The lenders are still working, though they've fallen behind, so they're moving fairly slowly. A lot of them, if not all of them, have been transitioned to working from home. So all the lenders are still operating in terms of mortgages happening. We are getting a lot of people inquiring about interest rates. There's so much in the news about how much the rates have gone down. The fixed rates plummeted quickly and then bounced right back up to where they were. Variable rates is a great time if you're on a variable rate mortgage, because the prime has dropped by 1.5% over the last few weeks, but the discount off prime has essentially gone away. So if you're looking for a variable rate mortgage now, there's almost no benefit to what it was a month or so ago.
Okay. What is happening with rates? I had heard a couple of days ago that fixed rates have gone up a little bit over what they were a couple of weeks ago. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. Like I said, they plummeted quickly when all this started. The bond market, which is what fixed rates are based on, dropped basically a full percent. So rates that were hovering in around 3% dropped to 2.25%. But now they're back up to basically where they were a month or so ago. So there's a lot of people calling, how can I get a better rate on my mortgage? And the short answer is you really can't, unless you're paying more than 3.25% right now. There's not really any way to save that much money. Some people still have other debts, so they're still, but just to get a better rate on the mortgage, it's not necessarily working out that great.
Are you seeing a lot of people trying to refinance at this point in terms of trying to access cash?
Yeah, there's some of that too, for sure. There's a lot of fear of, Ottawa's a big government town, so a lot of people are fairly comfortable with their income, but not everybody is. I guess if you were working at a restaurant or some sort of service industry, you're basically dead in the water already. But there is a lot of fear that, how much longer will my business keep going? Am I going to lose hours? Are going to be cut back completely? So there's some people that, want to clear up whatever debt that they have now while they're still employed. Once you lose your job, it's instantly too late. You can't do anything about it then. So if there are fears of your employment in the future, you'd want to, get all that debt together now, roll it in, take a longer amortization, reduce your mortgage payment, and then, hopefully that'll guide you through till we get through this, whenever that is.
We sent out an email to our clients last week with a number of the mortgage company phone numbers in case people wanted to defer their mortgage. I talked about that in my email last week, but maybe you can touch on that a little bit and maybe other options instead of deferring the mortgage, because the mortgage deferral may not be the best option for everybody.
Yeah, if you don't need it, I wouldn't take advantage of it, even if you qualify. Like if you have enough savings to, to float you through. It's unclear. It's not supposed to impact your credit score. My fear is that all this stuff is automated. So if you're late on a payment, what the lender that you're with automatically updates Equifax and TransUnion. Is somebody actually going to go in and manually override that? Probably not, but there was 215,000 people have already contacted the banks about deferring their mortgages. We won't know until 60 days from now, when the credit bureaus are updated for the second time, what's going to happen. I guess the good news is if you have to do it and it does impact your credit, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people in the same boat. So they're not going to punish that many people, I don't think. But again, if you don't need it, I wouldn't take it. In terms of other options, most lenders do have a skip a payment option. So if you've been paying accelerated biweekly, you have a little bit of space built up. Most lenders will let you skip a payment anyway. In the end, you're not saving any money in the long term. You're going to end up costing yourself because the interest still accrues. It just gets added to the mortgage balance and pushed back. So it's going to take longer to pay off your mortgage eventually as well. That interest is going to be charged interest, so interest on top of interest. It's going to cost you more.
Some of the banks have an interest-only option on the payment, like you pay a part of your mortgage payment, or is that a thing?
It's a thing, but it would have had to have been set up already. So you can get a mortgage now with an interest-only payment, and effectively that's all you do. The rate is obviously higher for that, so your payment would be a little bit less going forward. But again, if you're not paying down that principal, it's going to come back and bite you in the long run.
What about things like if a client calls me today and they see something that they want to buy and we don't have a pre-approval yet? Are pre-approvals taking longer to do?
There's a couple of lenders that have automated pre-approval. So if it's a nice clean file, you're not borrowing at the absolute maximum ability that you can qualify for. We can get a pre-approval back in 15 or 20 minutes from a couple of different lenders. But the rules are the rules. The rules are kind of carved in stone. There's not really much wiggle room. So once I get the information from a client, I can tell you fairly quickly if they're going to qualify or not for the. I can't put it on paper. It's not official, but I'll have the same access to the information that the lenders do.
And a question I got yesterday for people who are closing in the next few weeks. I mean, I know closings are still happening. Mike and I have had a number of discussions. You and I, Geoff, have had a number of discussions, but I had a client ask me whether they could move up their closing and whether or not the banks are open to doing that or not, or if they're hesitant because they already have a bit of a backlog right now.
It depends on the lender. Some are busier than others, and it depends on that time frame. So if it was scheduled to close in a month and they want to push it up 2 weeks, that's not a big deal. But if it was scheduled to close in 2 weeks and they want to push it up to Friday, yeah, I wouldn't bother.
Okay.
A reasonable amount of time, something that used to take us a day or two to get a turnaround on, because new documents had to be produced and signed and sent back and approved. So, just within reason, fairly confident we can make it happen.
Okay. And one more question. In terms of the mortgage, the new stress test rules, that has been deferred or partially deferred?
Yeah, partially deferred. The original rule was the average of the past week's 5-year fixed rate was what they were going to use, plus 2%. So if the average rate that the lenders offered last week was 3%, the qualifying basis point was going to be 5%, so 3 plus 2. It used to be 5.19%. That's what they were using as a qualifying rate. They dropped it a little bit. I think it's 5.14 or 5.09 or something right now. It should be less than that, probably. It should be maybe 3.89, or sorry, 4.89. But so the plan that they had to instigate that rule or initiate that rule changed. So I'm not really sure where they came up with that number now. They're not following their own guideline that they said they were going to come out with about a month ago.
Okay. And Geoff, any words of wisdom for anyone who's buying or selling right now from a mortgage perspective?
Mostly on time. Don't try to push anything through in 2 or 3 weeks. We used to be able to do, 3 weeks would be kind of our minimum just to get things through. But don't try to do anything that's that quick. Take your time. I'm sure the lawyers working on the file would appreciate a couple extra days as well.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Great, thanks, Geoff. I really appreciate it. Okay, Mike, your turn on the hot spot.
Okay.
What's happening from your world? I know not all lawyers are all working the same way right now, and you guys are a big firm, and I know you've moved everything offline, but tell us a little bit what you're seeing.
So yeah, we're still running, and what we've been telling, clients, business partners, everything, it's still business. It's just not business as usual. And that pretty much applies to everyone. I'm self-quarantined. We left before the travel advisory. So I'm working from home. I'm fully set up. The vast majority of our staff have also set up home offices. So the running joke is we have a lot more offices than we ever planned on having before, but it's great. The attitude of the staff has been wonderful in getting set up and kind of adjusting to this. And there has been a bit of a learning curve and an adjustment. People who might have been working in an office for 20, 30 years, and now you're saying, okay, now you got to do this from home. That's a lot to take in for some people, but everyone's been fantastic. Our office, especially the one on Carling, is our physical office is open, but really respecting and trying to comply with the social distancing that we're being asked to respect, really trying to use it as little as possible. So obviously we have couriers that are coming and going. Clients were really trying to decide if they're coming to pick up keys, and we have some different options in place for that. But in the rare instance now in which we are still getting keys, we'll leave them in a room where they can go in where no one is for them to pick up. When it comes to the meeting, because obviously before we would meet in person, they'd come to our office and we'd sign documents. There's a couple different ways we're going about it. A lot of the lenders have relaxed their requirements for originals. Not everyone, and it's kind of a kind of catch-can as to who has done what, and we're still trying to figure out, because quite frankly, the lenders I don't even think really know what they're prepared to accept as of yet. We still need originals. Digital signatures don't work. So when I say originals, like an original signature where a piece of paper is printed out and signed there. So we're doing meetings like this. We're doing Zoom meetings with people in their homes or Skype, things such as that. Not everybody's set up, right? I didn't even have a printer at home. I had to have my big printer from work lugged home so I could print out, because as lawyers, right, we still love paper. We still need to get stuff printed out. But what we're doing for people like that is we're doing drive-in meetings, and we came up with this idea pretty early on that what will happen is clients will come to our office. We'll have reviewed the documents with them ahead of time, but they'll stay in their cars and they'll park in the parking lot. Someone from our office will come down with the documents and leave them for them. Clients will sign them with their own pen. They don't have pens. We can give them a new pen they would then keep. We then confirm their identity. We'll take a picture of it. They'll then leave the documents and we'll pick them up, and that's how we're accomplishing that. So it's different, but it's working so far. Everything like that. Now, a lot of people are saying, okay, well, how am I going to get my keys if I'm not coming to your office? And thankfully, Daria, your office and a lot of our other partners have been great about using lock boxes, which realtors have been using for a long time. So what we're asking is that just leave the lockbox. If you're the listing agent, leave the lockbox on there. Let the seller's lawyer, if it's me or if it's the other person, know. They'll convey that information to the buyer's lawyer. And then when the deal closes, rather than me calling you and saying, hey, come and pick up keys, I'll say, hey, here's the code to the lockbox. You can now go and access the property. So that's really how the process has changed. I'll echo Geoff's sentiments. Things are just taking a little bit longer. The entire process, right? So whether it's a status certificate that maybe if we rushed it, we could get it in a couple of days. Again, that's a lot more difficult to do now. Again, dealing with the lenders, I think we were talking before we went live, Daria, we had a deal yesterday that unfortunately we had to push to today because the lender, we sent documents in a few days ago, but again, they're setting up their new way of working. They didn't even look at the documents until mid-morning. They needed a couple minor tweaks, which I don't think are necessary, but they did, and they have the gold, so they make the rules. So by the time we were able to get them what they needed and they were able to wire us money, well, now the wiring's taking a bit longer because the volume of wires are up. So money is sitting in cyberspace a little longer maybe than it did before. So we got the money a little before 5, which may have allowed us, but unfortunately the seller, which I understand where they're coming from, they didn't want to close the transaction without the money hitting their lawyer's account. It did that overnight. So we were able to close first thing in the morning. But again, it's just like Geoff said, everything is taking a little bit longer. So the one thing we are telling, if you have a closing coming up and you're buying a property, please make sure you do have an alternate arrangement. If, and it's not every transaction, I wouldn't even say it's a majority of the transaction. It's still a small minority of the transactions. But if unfortunately you're one of those in which we do need to kind of an extra day, make sure you have a place to go, right? Don't plan on moving in. I tell people at the best of times, don't plan on doing anything in your new house the day you get the keys. Now, so it's really imperative, maybe have a bottle of champagne on ice. The LCBO is essential as well, so they're still open. And you can order a pizza contactless delivery, of course, and you can go into your new house and celebrate a little bit. But, just don't count on it, because Murphy's Law, if you're the one that adamantly need to be in your house that evening, I can guarantee you Murphy's Law, you will be the one that I have to call with the bad news. So just have that backup plan.
Okay, awesome. And so you touched on, most closings are happening the same day or the day they're supposed to. Perhaps a couple are slipping through to the next day. Have you seen any transactions or many transactions that just aren't happening? I know we talked about one also this morning where there's a quarantine problem.
Yeah, touch wood, no, we have not had any transactions, quote unquote, fail. So nobody has breached their agreement. Nobody has either said, I'm not buying or I'm not selling. One thing we mentioned earlier is there's a circumstance where we're on for the buyer and the seller, a family member looks like, and we don't know for sure, but what we've been told is that they either are, or there's a very good chance that they are positive for COVID, and they've either interacted with the seller or been in the property. So what everyone's decided, and the nice thing in this entire situation, what I found is everyone is being really reasonable and using a lot of common sense and kindness and caring about everyone involved. So we've decided to extend the transaction. Everyone was in agreement. So we've actually extended the closing for 3 weeks to allow that to process, to allow the self-quarantine to happen. And Daria, I think you've seen as well, there's new clauses into a lot of the agreements we did up that if for whatever reason something has happened that it has required a self-quarantine, that parties agree that the extension will happen. So the one thing, and Geoff can probably echo this, the one thing I would say, which might happen, is if someone had a longer closing, let's say they either they signed an agreement in the fall, and they qualified for their mortgage and everything was all good. If they've lost their job since then, I have seen and I have heard where some lenders are now starting to do kind of double checks, the day of or the day before closing. And if you're one of those unfortunate people who have been a victim of what's happened to our economy because of this, it could present some difficulties. And if you are in that situation, what I would say is don't wait. If something's happened where you have an agreement, contact your mortgage professional as soon as possible, because there might be other options that are out there. But the more time Geoff has to navigate those options, the better. So don't wait until you get a phone call. Be proactive, make the call, just be honest, say, listen, what's happened, either my hours have been reduced or, I've been laid off, and Geoff can work his magic and see if there's anything that he can do.
Awesome. So I'll ask you the same question. If somebody calls me and says, oh, there's a vacant property I want to buy, can we close in 2 weeks? The answer is no, right?
Well, if they're buying cash, if they don't need Geoff, a cash buyer, we can probably make magic happen. But the majority of people obviously do need that. I would say 2 weeks is exceptionally tight. I'm not saying it can't happen. What I'm saying is everything has to go absolutely perfectly. And Daria, you can attest, in a normal circumstance, how often does everything go absolutely perfect with a real estate?
Well, we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, so put it in this context, and I would say prudence is the better part of valor. You want to make sure you're going to get that. I don't think right now, a really quick closing date, and Daria, you can answer this better than either one of us, but I think if you're in multiple offers, I think whereas previously, a really quick closing would have been attractive, I think most sellers and listing agents are understanding that there's no point in picking a closing date that isn't feasible, that we're just going to have to kick down the road anyways. So I think you are seeing the closings getting extended a little bit.
Okay. And any last words of advice for any buyers of sellers that might see this video?
Like I said at the start, it's business. It's just not business as usual. So as much as everything that's going on, I know we're trying to, and it's easier some days than others, but to be as positive as possible, relentless positivity. If we all pull together and we all are positive and keep doing the best that we can do, respecting the social distancing, but still trying to, support each other. And if you're interested in a house, if you see something, call Daria. There's ways to do it. She's a magic maker. She can make it happen. So don't hesitate. We're still open. We're still doing business. And if you have any questions, even if you just have simple questions, call Daria, call Geoff, call myself. We're all happy to help, even if you're not involved in a transaction right now.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you to both of you for taking the time out of your day to do this. I and all my clients, I'm sure, will very much appreciate seeing this.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Stay safe, guys.
Thank you.